Hello, America, and welcome to this Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm John Solomon, joining you as always from, today, not Washington, but Milwaukee.
You almost said Washington,
D.C.
D.C.
Almost said Washington. I guess I'm homesick already. But Amanda, we had an amazing week here in Milwaukee. We saw a lot of incredible speeches. We saw a lot of real people. But one of the most memorable events for me was going over and being part, as you were, of the Moms for Liberty event at the theater. 9 extraordinary political leaders talking to us for over 2.5 hours, but real issues being discussed. Not the stuff that elitists like to talk about, but the stuff that moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles needed to hear. What were your big takeaways?
Oh, man. You know, Tiffany Justice, they do such good work at Moms for Liberty. And as she has told us, 48 states in this country have chapters, over 300 chapters. They are making an incredible impact. And, you know, I hope to be a mom soon. And at that point, I'm desperately going to be needing the counsel and the resources that they offer, because they offer a ton of resources as well. On top of all of these events and the chapters, they have resources online, so check that out. But Tiffany is just a force to be reckoned with, and I love this event. And
her co-founder, Tina Desowich, 2 extraordinary people. I was backstage with them, as you were at the beginning, and just to see first how far the group has matured, how much it has grown in influence and membership. I think
in just a few years.
Just a few years. Did Tiffany tell us 300 chapters now?
Yes, over 300.
300 chapters. I think last year was only 120, so it's like doubled in a year.
Yes.
Winning school board elections now, trying to win at the federal level for the first time. I think they got a $3 million investment. There are some great conversations that everybody's going to see today. We're going to start this first block off with the beginning of our conversation with 3 attorneys general, the attorney generals of Missouri, Louisiana, who've been collaborating on a lot of great projects and lawsuits. And then Patrick Morrisey, the West Virginia attorney general, whose major lawsuit
paved the way for Loper.
Yeah, it's one of the most important decisions. West Virginia versus EPA changed the administrative state forever. Amazing conversations, and when you listen up, you can hear something interesting. Patrick Morrisey describes how what case against the EPA is going to affect moms and dads in their battles with school bureaucrats. Take a listen. We're going to take you through the next hour, starting off here with the Attorney General's panel. Over the last couple of years as a host on Real America's Voice, we've had some extraordinary litigations, cases that have really defended the Constitution, changed the course of history, and in some ways reined in bureaucrats who thought it was their government, not your government. These 3 folks here are right at the forefront of that constitutional fight. Joining me from the great state of Louisiana, the first female attorney general in the history of the state, Attorney General Liz Murrill. Good to have you here today. This next guy may require a title change soon. We'll see how the election turns out. He's running for governor of West Virginia, but since 2013, right, sir? You've been the Attorney General of West Virginia, and one of the most important law cases in the last century in American history was brought by West Virginia. West Virginia versus EPA, the first major court ruling to rule in the regulatory state. Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, good to have you here, sir. All right. And a newcomer, but he's on my show all the time because there's always a lawsuit. It seems like every couple of days, from the great state of Missouri, Attorney General Andrew Bailey. Great to have all 3 of you here today. Really excited. You're going to kick us off with a question, right?
Let's talk about Title IX. This is an issue that a number of attorneys general across the United States have been weighing in on. Moms for Liberty just got a preliminary injunction out of the 10th Circuit. That was Kansas, Utah, Alaska, Wyoming, that we were going to be able to stop Title IX from being implemented. It's supposed to happen August 1st. Title IX, a 52-year-old rule that was supposed to safeguard opportunities for women in education, in sports. In the Biden administration, the DOE has decided that they wanted to redefine sex to include gender identity and sexual orientation. Liz, I'll start with you. You and I spoke before the Supreme Court recently, saying we will not allow boys in our girls' sports teams, boys in our girls' bathrooms, and we will not allow schools to keep secrets from us as parents. Can you talk a little bit about what your state is doing to push back against the Biden administration?
Well, you know, just in the Title IX context, I mean, we've filed quite a number of lawsuits. I was the Solicitor General before I became Attorney General, and I think I'm up to over 40 lawsuits against this administration. That's maybe a conservative account, many of which I'm partnering, you know, with my fellow Attorney Generals in. But the Title IX one was special. I mean, I was proud to say that 13 minutes after the rule was published, we had a lawsuit on file with a number of my state colleagues, and that this one in particular was the culmination of a number of prior attempts by this administration to change the meaning of sex and implement this. So I was grateful to have the partnership of our superintendent of education, Cade Brumley, who joined, and then we ended up with over 20 school boards who actually joined, and I represented them all, but it was just great to have such a strong coalition saying no. This is not only contrary to common sense, and it's unsafe, and it's legally wrong, but we will not comply. And that was kind of our message: is we will not comply, and we are confident that we will win this lawsuit, and we did. I mean, we got the first injunction.
So. Wonderful. General Morrissey, General Bailey, either of you like to weigh in on this issue?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because I think many of the AGs are very knee-deep in fighting back against the Biden Title IX issues. In West Virginia, we've been really busy defending our Save Women Sports law, which raises a lot of the same questions that are coming up on the federal level. And obviously, when our legislature had passed that, dealing with it, providing protection for women who are really worried about the loss of athletic opportunities, we went in and we had the opportunity to really build out a record as to why all of the efforts that legislatures have been engaged in over the last 50 years have been proper, because there have been sex-segregated sports for time immemorial. And in fact, Title IX built that framework in, and it's only in recent years where people are starting to say, let's try to have this hulking male play sports with women. And in West Virginia, our legislature got out in front of that. They passed a law barring that from happening. And then we went into court. We actually had an injunction immediately slapped against us, but then we went through a process and literally submitted 3,000 pages of evidence, 400 docket entries showing the biological differences between men and women, and we had a district court judge flip his position because he saw the evidence. Men indeed are different than women. What a concept. And I think we're very hopeful this may actually be the first major case teed up, because we just filed a petition for cert at the U.S. Supreme Court last week, and we're hopeful we're going to get a good reaction from the court. There are a number of these cases. 25 states in the country have these laws defending the integrity of women's sports, and now we have a chance to get this teed up right before the Supreme Court. It's our hope that it takes off the table a lot of these radical Title IX proposals that are coming from the Biden administration. So the states are very deeply involved in this.
Yeah. It amazes me the woke left's war on women. You know, the left used to champion women's rights, and for more than 50 years, Title IX stood as a monument to women's equality. And it is under attack from the radical left. And they want to pervert the law to achieve a radical left-wing policy objective that they could never get through Congress. And it's not just that it's a bad policy position for public safety and fairness reasons and for federalism reasons, that it infringes upon states' rights to regulate their own athletic competitions, but it's a bigger problem than that. It's a usurpation of power by this administration, using an unelected bureaucratic empire, the administrative state, this soft despotism. Our founders certainly understood that diffusing power over three co-equal branches of government was essential to maximizing our individual liberties. And when you have unelected bureaucrats unaccountable to the people who are making these types of rules, and when it directly contradicts with the plain text of the statutes, you've got constitutional, legal, and policy problems. Was proud to file suit, and we're going to keep fighting on this issue. And I think that our colleague that I filed suit with, Tim Griffin in Arkansas, said it best at our press conference. He said, "Who is for this?
Right.
Who thinks this is a good idea?"
Yeah. I think a lot of people in California are asking that question this morning. Last night, Governor Newsom signed a bill that basically said bureaucrats know better than parents what to do with children. That sentiment is sweeping across the Democratic Party in many states. I'd like to go all the way down the line. Start with you, General Bailey. Come back this way. How are each of you trying to fight that sentiment in the courts?
Yeah, I think it's a distinction in just some basic, fundamental, irreducible, axiomatic principles of belief. I believe that our rights come from God, not man. And that I believe our Constitution is to protect us from the government, and the government exists to protect our rights. And anybody who can't say that clearly is on the wrong side of that issue, and the left has clearly rejected that approach.
All right, folks, don't go anywhere. A lot more from the Moms for Liberty event. We're going to take a quick commercial break. More with those great attorneys generals right after these messages. Hey folks, if you're like me, your home is your castle, and it's likely your most precious and valuable asset, so why aren't you protecting it? Homes across America are being stolen in a scam called title theft. That's why you need home title protection. Think about this. If no one is watching out for your title, then it's just a matter of time until these cyber thieves target you. Don't fall prey to these thieves. Go to HometitleLock.com to make sure your title is safe. Use the promo code JUSTNEWS. They will send you a complete title scan of your home's title, and your first 30 days of triple lock home title protection is going to be totally free. HometitleLock.com. Use the promo code JUSTNEWS. Protect your most precious asset.
Welcome back, America. We are so excited that you have tuned in, listening to those three attorneys general who are fighting on behalf of parents across America. We've got more from that discussion right here.
I just wanted to amplify Liz's point. So interestingly, in West Virginia, as this issue was reaching a fevered pitch, we have a scenario where there is a biological male identifying as a female, and one of the most powerful moments in West Virginia over the last year is that there were 5 little young women. These are brave, courageous women. They actually decided they were not going to participate in the track meet. They were protesting because it was fundamentally unfair. It went viral. Yeah. And I will tell you, to Liz's point, we win this not just in the courts of law, we win this by our kids, our parents, teachers, people across the country recognizing the basic differences here and why this is an all-in cause.
So I'm going to jump in here and say, I promise you, if you can stand up and hold the torch of liberty and share that message in your community, you are not the only one that is thinking that, but you need to stand up and tell the truth on this issue. So thank you for that. Yeah. General Bailey, you have been shown yourself to be in a real champion of the First Amendment. And we talked about school boards for a minute. You're the top cops in your states, right? Our mics were being shut off left and right. We had moms and dads getting up at school board meetings concerned about the curriculum, concerned about schools being shut down or forced masking, quarantining. We cannot stop talking about COVID. We need to continue to talk about and make sure people remember how horrible it was so it never happens again. But what were your thoughts as you saw school board members directing police to escort parents out of rooms and to shut down mics?
Yeah, disgusted. In Missouri, we don't co-parent with the government.
That's right.
Let me say this, as a parent of 4 small children, this is personal for me. I'm invested in this issue personally and professionally. And so let me give you an example where the rubber hits the road. We had a school district in Wentzville, Missouri, that was going to adopt a radical transgender bathroom policy. And they were going to do it behind closed doors without meeting the public notice and meeting requirement and allowing the parents to have a voice in that process. That is illegal. That violates Missouri's open meetings law that the Attorney General's office has broad enforcement authority over. And luckily, we had some board members who were whistleblowers who came forward and swore out affidavits saying, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And you know what the other school board members and the superintendent's response was? It's none of the parents' darn business. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? So we filed suit. We put a stop to it. The superintendent has resigned, and we're not done yet. Yeah, that's right. We're not done yet. And that's just the first piece because the fight goes on. So we're going to force the board to hold meetings, reject that kind of radical transgender ideology, give the parents a voice in the process, respect parental rights. But then you have this other thing that's going on where the members of the school district, so not the school board, not the elected members, but kind of the deep state, began retaliating with an investigation against the school board members that blew the whistle. So we had to move in and use whistleblower protection laws to then protect those affiants who are willing to come forward and say that that what had happened was wrong. So it's a fight on all fronts on this issue, and we're going to respect parental rights in the state of Missouri, ensuring not only the safety of the children in the public education system, but also that the things they're exposed to are consistent with the parents' values. It's a simple formula.
Yeah. So many parents looking for that common sense. It just seems to have escaped so many places. General Merrill, I think a lot of people heard about this decision a couple weeks ago, Chevron doctrine. It sounds, oh, that must be something to do with oil. What's that about? Well, it does. I guess it started with oil, but it really is a fundamental win for individual rights and the crushing of sort of a very large administrative state. You're quarterbacking lots of lawsuits. How does the Supreme Court's ruling there begin to empower parents against bureaucrats, parents against federal agencies? It seems like this is another landmark decision like West Virginia EPA.
It absolutely is a landmark decision. And, you know, for a little kind of background for those of you who don't know anything about Chevron deference, Chevron deference is just a concept that's implemented by the courts to give deference to administrative agencies on their interpretation of regulations or statutes. And what the Loper-Bright decision came out and said, and I think there's a companion case that with it, but Loper-Bright is the shorthand name that we use for this decision that basically put power back in the courts to say what the law is. And this is a concept that goes back to Marbury versus Madison, where the Supreme Court said, no, it's our job under separation of powers. It is our job to interpret the law and say what the law is. And so all they did was reset what should have always been the standard, which gives us a chance to go into court and not basically be fighting with one hand tied behind our back already, because the court is going to say, well, if the agency says this is what it means, then we have to give deference to the agency. And now they said, no, you don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. So the courts say what the law is, and that gives us a chance to go make those arguments to a judge and have the judge execute, carry out his job or her job to interpret the statute, and then we can take it up the chain from there and eventually maybe end up in the United States Supreme Court if that's where we go. But it takes a lot of discretion and power away from agencies, which this administration has really, really used to its advantage more than any administration that I've ever seen.
Yeah, no doubt.
General Morrissey, did you have something you wanted to add?
Absolutely. So one of the big goals of the Republican attorneys general over the past 12 years, I've been AG since 2013, has been to wipe out Chevron deference. And I think the reason, thank you, the reason why so many attorneys general have been focused on this is because this is at its core one of the most important parts of our constitutional structure. When you think about how a bill becomes a law and then what happens thereafter, you're usually not thinking about things where an agency bureaucrat acts without any power just because the matter is complicated. This was one of the most absurd decisions out of the Supreme Court we had in a long time. And so the goal has always been that if you're going to legislate on a particular matter, my goodness, Congress, being the body with legislative representatives across the country, should act. And if the agency obtains power, it should be clearly articulated to the agency what that power is all about. So I think what you're seeing with Chevron deference, and when you saw with the major questions doctrine, our big West Virginia v. EPA case, is that the courts are looking much more so as to whether that power was delegated to the agency. And if it does, hey, that's great. That's consistent more with how the founders envisioned separation of powers. But it also means that the little guy gets an opportunity to play, and it's not a one-sided affair, because an individual plaintiff can go into court, and if he has a meritorious case, he gets to proceed and go as far as he wants, and it should be done on the basis of fairness, reading the statute, not just because you're on the government, tie goes to the government. That's not the way it should work. That's not the way it's going to be anymore.
Let's talk about censorship. Murthy versus Biden, I believe, was sent back down to a lower court by the Supreme Court. And so, let's talk about that case a little bit. The federal government wanted social media to be censored during COVID. There were all kinds of things they didn't want us to see or share. What does that case mean to America, really, Missouri and then America?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say I'm so proud to partner with my colleague from Louisiana, Liz Murrill, on that case. And you know, what an honor it was to sit with her at counsel table at the United States Supreme Court back in March as that case was argued. And the fight for the First Amendment goes on. We are far from over in that case. We did preliminary discovery to get a preliminary injunction. And what we uncovered was a relationship of coercion and collusion from the White House across a spectrum of bureaucratic agencies targeting conservative voices for censorship, your voices. The government doesn't want you involved in public discourse because you're on the right side of the issues. And Biden can't win the argument on the merits, so he's got to silence you. And how does he do that? He boots you off social media. He de-emphasizes, deplatforms, shadow bans you. And let me say this, the type of censorship that's going on today is much more pernicious and nefarious than ever before in human history. When King George shut down a printing press, everyone knew, and it was just words that were taken away. But what's going on today is done in shadowy corridors of big tech, at the government's demand, and you may never know you were shadow banned, de-emphasized, or deplatformed. And your First Amendment right to speak was violated, but our First Amendment right to hear from you was violated as well. And it's not just words anymore, it's images, it's body language. And so, within the context of history, this is a case of enormous magnitude. Preliminary discovery, got a preliminary injunction. What the Supreme Court said was that the government absolutely coerced big tech social media into silencing American voices in violation of the First Amendment, but we need more evidence to prove that that censorship extended beyond the year 2021. Guess what? We're going back to the trial court. We're going to find it. We're going to continue to root out the vast censorship enterprise so you have a free, fair, and open marketplace of ideas.
We hope you all are enjoying that discussion as much as we did when it was live, and it's just incredible, everything that they are talking about and the ways that they are fighting. We thank you for being here. We've got to take a quick commercial break, but we're going to be back with much more of that after these breaks.
Hey, America, it's 2024, and you know what? You got to start taking care of your liver now more than ever. Why? Because the latest data from the American Heart Association indicates that adults with fatty liver were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those without. The American Liver Foundation says that 100 million of us Americans have fatty liver, which means many people are at risk. We throw everything at our livers, right? Cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, Tylenol, statins, cigarettes, you got it. That's why so many of us have a sluggish fatty liver that makes us gain weight and lose energy. For decades now, your liver's helped you with over 500 key functions every day. It's time for you to return to favor. Help your liver. There's a solution. Liver Health Formula, an all-natural supplement which contains 11 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. You can try Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of nano-powered omega-3 to go along with it. That'll keep your heart healthy. Try Liver Health Formula by going to getliverhelp.com/justnews. That's getliverhelp.com/justnews and claim your... All right, folks, welcome back to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. We have more from that extraordinary Moms for Liberty event in Milwaukee last week at the Republican National Convention. Take a look. And as someone who's been in an industry that's been censored and at a site that's been censored, you changed the mindset just by bringing that lawsuit. All of a sudden, Twitter and other places were much more hesitant to go do things. Just jumping in made a difference. It's really a remarkable case when you look at it, because the impact before the courts ruled was social media had a light on them, and what Mike Benz has done at the Foundation for Freedom Online and others, we're now learning it and we're making them ashamed to do it. And I have to really applaud your state for taking that lead and your state for taking that lead.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would kind of give a shout out to Elon Musk, who changed the conversation a little bit.
He did a little bit, yes.
You know, because he pushed a lot of material out. And
he did. He gave us that transparency.
Changed the way that Twitter and now X was operating and cooperating in an investigation. Congress got involved on the House side with some investigations, which also pushed out more information. I mean, it's very disturbing what was happening, and the how rapid these big tech platforms complied with the pressure that the government was putting on them, and I think the opinions that we defended, that we won these injunctions. They were very detailed and well written. They explained this government-wide operation. It was larger than anything we had ever seen. It's terrifying. you know, that CISA and the FBI and that all of these organizations that that have so much power were involved in pressuring and taking down protected speech that they knew was protected speech,
right,
that they acknowledged was protected speech, and that it affected public health because they didn't want to contribute to, they didn't want anybody to be contributing to vaccine hesitancy when it came to COVID. Well, my youngest son had myocarditis as a result of the Pfizer vaccine. So it had a very personal connection for me to say, you know, you are intentionally withholding information, affecting what we call, you know, science and investigation and a fair evaluation of the efficacy of these vaccines. And then it went on to involve the Hunter Biden laptop, which obviously affected our elections. It was so pervasive, and it is a huge threat to the Republic. I mean, it is one of the most important cases, and because of it's a different type of communication that's been established since, you know, we haven't had a First Amendment fight like this before, and we haven't had the government putting that kind of coercion on corporate entities like they were, I think, in the past, with the same kind of consequences. So we're going to continue to have that fight. There were a couple of other decisions that came out of the Supreme Court that I think did press the issue of coercion, and coercion's not okay. I'm not sure why it was not okay in those cases, but it was okay in ours. I don't think you can really square that, but we will keep fighting it. And I think the fact that we brought the fight, that we persisted with the fight, that Judge Doty, one of Louisiana federal court judge, allowed us to conduct early discovery, and that was huge for us in that case. I mean, all of those things made a difference, and then other people kind of coming in and helping move the ball made a difference. And so now at least it's out in the open a lot more than it was before.
We touched on education a little bit, and we've talked a little bit about how attorneys general are working together across the United States. One of the interesting things about Moms for Liberty has been that what's happening in one place isn't just happening in that one place, right? It's happening in all of your states. And as you continue to look at ways to find solutions to push back, one of the areas that we are concerned about is age appropriateness. America used to understand, we used to all agree that there were some things that were appropriate for kids, and there were some things that were appropriate for adults, much like we used to know what a woman and a man was, right? 2 sexes, 0 genders, infinite personalities. So the books in the libraries, I would be remiss if I did not bring up, as a final question, the content, the books in the libraries. A book that if I showed a child on a playground, I would be arrested, but can be put in a school and can be shown to a child in the school. And it just seems like such a double standard. And so how has this issue come up in your state, and how are you working to put some guardrails around it?
You know, that is an issue that has really struck a nerve. Certainly in our state, it struck a nerve. And when I was Solicitor General and Jeff Landry, who's now the governor, was Attorney General, we worked on a guide for school board, for communities, basically, governing bodies that had some authority over library boards and for the library boards themselves, and kind of started this discussion about what can you do, how can you engage. You know, I reacted pretty viscerally to this idea at the very beginning. I thought it was fundamentally ridiculous to say that we don't have any ability to remove a book from the collection if it's a content-based decision. Guys, we've been doing that for decades. I mean, the library, and you know, you can buy stuff on Amazon.com, which you couldn't do in the past before. So you know, libraries used to be brick and mortar with a pretty limited space on the bookshelves. So we move content in and out. They are constantly changing the collection. It wasn't until this fight began where we saw these books and this movement that was coming through the Library Association, that we started to this discussion about can you or can't you remove books from the library, and I was like, of course you can. Well, it turns out there's a Supreme Court case from a while back that says it's a plurality. It's not really, I'm not sure that it's going to survive a new challenge, and I'm happy to bring that case up to the Supreme Court, because I think that it's absurd to say that we have no authority to curate the collection when we have no legal obligation to make it available to begin with.
Correct. Very true. And unfortunately, many schools do not have libraries or librarians or access. So we're not talking a lot about what the kids should be reading, right? Instead of a lot of this nonsense. Gentlemen?
Look, I think to build on that, all of us have grown up in environments where there are age-appropriate standards for different activities. So if you want to go have a drink of alcohol, there's a particular date that you have to reach. If you want to smoke a cigarette, there's a particular age that you have to reach. I remember growing up that you would have to get permission from your parent if you were going to take aspirin in the schools. Anyone remember that? Yeah. But if you're a little bit older, you remember those facts. So we have to step back a little bit and know that there are appropriate standards to put in place, and most certainly even inclusive of contact. And that has been going on for the longest of times. And you're right, these cases go back decades and decades. So we have to step back and remember there's a long history, because ultimately there's a lot of public money that goes into these libraries, public money that goes into the educational systems as well. And a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old does not operate the same way as an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old. And that's some of the argument that I make when it comes to different issues, not only with respect to the libraries, but a lot of the gender transition and other issues, that 3- and 5-year-olds are not capable of making the same decisions as an adult, and we should not be afraid to say that.
Amen.
And by the way, they do say that in criminal context, right? I mean, we've had this battleground over accountability in the juvenile justice system, and the whole push was their brains aren't wired the same way. It takes time to get to kind of the same decision-making capacity of an adult, and it really doesn't happen until you're 27. I mean, all of that fight has continued in the criminal courts, and yet when it comes now to our schools and to health decisions, they're saying that we're going to let children who are 10 years old or 3 years old or 4 years old be making decisions that will change them forever.
Yeah.
When it's a parental rights issue again, making sure that the materials that your children are exposed to are consistent with your values as parents. I have a right as a parent to have certain conversations with my kids at different points in their maturity. And that's not up to the school, that's up to the parents, and that's codified in Missouri law. It's section 170.015. It governs how human sexuality is allowed and is not allowed to be taught in schools. And it governs what kind of curriculum is permissible in libraries and schools. And there's a parental opt-in or opt-out procedure. And now the left wants to groom children. They want to sexualize children. And they're going to do it in the name of diversity. And as conservatives who support not only traditional values, but also parental rights, we have to have the courage and the bravery to stand up and say, it is not an exercise in diversity to expose our children to age-inappropriate sexual content. And to stand up and say no, and it starts with empowering yourselves at the school boards and using lawsuits and cease and desist letters from the AG's office.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, in extraordinary conversations with Governor DeSantis of Florida, Governor Sanders of Arkansas, 2 game changers in politics. We'll have that right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sticking with us through this very, very important episode. We've got more from that Moms for Liberty event right here.
Governor DeSantis is my governor. We love him in the state of Florida, and he has stood up for freedom even when it wasn't very popular. So thank you for that, Governor DeSantis. Sarah Sanders is the first woman to serve as governor of Arkansas. Prior to serving as governor, she gained a bevy of political experience working on several congressional and presidential campaigns. And we can all remember when she served as the White House press secretary for President Trump from 2017 to 2019. You both have 3 children, moms and dads, and you are showing a bold new vision for America. Governor DeSantis, you set out a blueprint for America, showing in Florida what we had done as far as safeguarding parental rights and moving our economy forward. We'll focus on parental rights to start if we could. Let's talk a little bit about some of the work you've done in Florida to safeguard parental rights.
Sure. I mean, I think that it used to be you would send your kid to school and they would learn math and science and stuff, and maybe not everything was perfect, but you didn't have to worry about your kid going to kindergarten and being told that they should change their gender. You didn't have to worry about some of the things that now we start to see in our society. And so we put the kibosh on that in Florida. We said we are not going to be indulging in things like gender ideology in our schools. And you'd think that that would be something that would be pretty common sense. I know with parents it was common sense. It was not something that the media wanted to hear. And it was also not something that our most powerful and well-known company, Disney, wanted to hear. So we ended up having a standoff over that. And, you know, I'm just sick over the years. So many Republicans, anytime some big bad corporation opposes what they want to do, they like cower in the corner like little scared kitties. And so we said no. You know, we are going to lead the state of Florida. We're not going to subcontract out leadership to a woke corporation based in Burbank, California. And so we won that battle with the Parents' Rights Bill. We won. We also won the battle of eliminating all the corporate welfare that they had. And the result is now they want to build all these new parks, and they're going to end up paying us a lot more money than they would have before. So it was a win across the board, but it was the right thing to do for parents. We've also done universal school choice in Florida. So money follows the student. You go where you want to go. And it's good for students, good for parents, but it also creates competition amongst schools. You open a charter school, you're entitled to no students. You got to get, some parents got to say, I'm sending my kid to charter. You open a private school, some parents have to say, I want to send my kids there. So people know that this money is available, and we now have, between private, charter, and district choice programs, we got over 1.5 million students in school choice in the state of Florida actively that are doing it. And then we eliminated CRT, we've done all that. We've done a big emphasis on American civics now in the state of Florida. But I think one thing that kind of gets lost in this, because we think parents are like, okay, kids that are in the home, which is important. My wife and I have very young kids, 7, 6, and 4, so all that is very sensitive to us. But we also recognize that, wait a minute, maybe you get the K-12 schools right. Maybe you are able to do a great job as a parent. But if you send your kid to a university at age 18 and the university undoes everything you've worked hard for 18 years, then what good does that do? So we've taken on higher ed in Florida, and the first state to do it. We were the first state to eliminate DEI in our university system. It's really discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and it's wrong. We also have all tenured professors now undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. So you have professors that are not meeting the mission, and the mission of these universities is a classical mission of education: search for truth, prepare people to be citizens of this republic. It is not about indoctrination. It's not about political ideology. And so there have been some professors that have gone out their merry way. And you know, the media will sometimes be like, oh, there's a brain drain, professors are leaving Florida. Wait a minute. If Marxist professors are leaving Florida, that is not a bad thing for Florida. That's a good thing. So on higher ed, and we've got more that we're going to do. You know, we are going to have. We're ranked #1 public education, higher education nationwide 6 years in a row. But we are going to be known for providing a classic university experience, as our founders would have understood it. When the Hamas started going to campus after October 7th, you didn't see them overrun any of our Florida universities for a simple reason. If one of our universities would have turned into Columbia, the president of that university would have been out of a job the next day. That's just the way it's going to be. We had one of our trustees at New College in Sarasota was being harassed by some of these Marxist students, and so the university kicked him out. We had other students that were screaming and interrupting a graduation ceremony, so the university is withholding their diplomas until they apologize to the speaker, to their classroom. So we're not letting the inmates run the asylum. We're not going to use your tax dollars to create a university system that is dedicated to indoctrination and political activism. So we're doing it right. We're happy to do it. Everything we do, we get blowback from the left and from the media, but that just tells me that we're over the target.
That's right.
It's such an honor to be here and certainly to share the stage with one of my fellow conservative governors, and thank you both for having us and all of Moms for Liberty for not just having this event, but more importantly, the work that you do every single day back in your home states. Some of the most ardent conservative leaders that we have and grassroots activists anywhere in the country, and so thank you for your tireless efforts and the work that you do. You know, Governor DeSantis has a little bit of a longer record of success, but I'm hoping to give him a good run for his money. I'm a year and a half in, and we have been able to do some incredible things in Arkansas. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we have found is that people, frankly, want government to leave them alone. They want government out of their schools, out of their homes, out of their business, out of their community, dictating every single action that they take. And that's exactly what Republican governors are doing.
All right, we have to dip out for just one more block. We've got a few more bills to pay, so we're going to do that, and we'll be back on the other side.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're going to take you back for the finale of the conversations with Governor DeSantis and Governor Sanders at the Moms for Liberty event. Take a listen.
Now, the broader use of social media, even apart from that, what we did was try to say, okay, right now, social media companies under federal law are actually not allowed to issue an account to people that are under 14. Now, those companies do it. They don't verify. Federal government doesn't really do anything. So we said, 14 and under, that's similar to what federal law is. You can't issue a social media account to someone that's 14 or under. It just can't do it. There's other things you can't do for people that are young. 14 and 15, or 15 and 16, parental consent. If a parent wants to authorize you to have an account, they can do it above that, then they can do it. And look, if a parent has a 12-year-old, and they want to lend the 12-year-old their own social media account, we're not going to police that. We're policing the companies, because I think the companies are the problem. And what the companies have done is they have technology that's addictive. I think it's terrible for kids to be buried in these phones all day. They should be outside. They should be doing other things. So that's going into effect this year. Obviously, it's going to be litigated, but we did the social media. We were the first state to do protections against social media censorship for individuals, because they can kick you off social media because you're conservative. They wouldn't do that if you're liberal. So we just tried to provide protections. It got struck down in the lower courts. It went to the Supreme Court. They sent it back because they said the courts made mistakes. So we'll see what happens there. But these things are going to get litigated. It's very hard. But here's the deal. Is social media a net positive for children? No. Social media is clearly a net negative. And I'm not going to say that's 100% negative, because there are good things you can do, sharing moments and things like that, sending videos that are in good, there's positive that can come of it. But the negative far outweighs it. And so I think what we're trying to do is really help parents navigate this. And so I think it'll be easy for a parent now, if a 12-year-old's like, I want Facebook or I want this, they can say, no, they're not allowed to issue you an account, don't. And then if they get a little older and the parent wants to do it, they can make that judgment about whether they want to or not. But social media has been very, very harmful to our youth. It's intentional. These companies are profiting from it, and our country is suffering because of it.
So Tiffany and I have saved the sort of broadest question for last, but it's about vision, and it's coming to you, Governor Sanders, just as a heads up. And it is based on this premise. Americans have every reason to wake up and be discouraged, even though we know that they shouldn't, right? We ought to have eternal hope. We have a lot more reasons in the last days to know that someone more powerful than us is in charge. But I encourage conservatives and Americans around the country not to focus on the worst case scenario in terms of policy and politics, but on the best case scenario. Moms for Liberty, I think, is the great, great entity promoting that. Cast a vision for us, for America, 10 years from now. What does America look like based on what you have done in Arkansas, Governor DeSantis has done in Florida, what Moms for Liberty, all these people who are part of this movement have done? Give us some encouragement about why what they are doing is connected to that vision.
I think the really simple answer is that even on our difficult days and when you turn on the news, it can be very easy to get discouraged. But ultimately, and at the end of the day, I think the thing that we have to remember and hang on to is no matter what, America is still the greatest country that the world has ever known. And there is great confidence and hope in that. You know, one of the most powerful moments during my 2.5 years at the White House was getting to travel with the president, and I had the opportunity to go to nearly 24 different countries. And on those, every experience is a little bit different, but certainly one of the most memorable moments, not just of that time, but probably my entire life, was on a trip that I had the opportunity to travel with him. And I know you've heard this story, to Iraq at Christmas. And it was literally Christmas Day, and I had just finished up the chaotic day of Christmas with my 3 kids, cleaning up wrapping paper that had been shoved into every corner of our house, when I had to leave our home, unable to tell my own kids where I was going, because the place that we were headed that night was so dangerous. They didn't want anybody in the world to know that the President of the United States would be touching down and spending his Christmas there. And as we took off on Air Force One, we did so in complete and total darkness. They turned the lights off the plane, the lights off the runway, and 12 hours later, we touched down in the war-torn part of Western Iraq. And when we did, once again, it was in total darkness, except for a dining hall that had a little bit of light coming from it. And the reason you could see light as we touched down from that dining hall was because hundreds of troops had packed into this little compact space, thinking in that moment that they were going to have dinner with senior military leadership that had gathered to celebrate the Christmas holiday. They had absolutely no idea that the President and First Lady were about to walk into that dining hall. And when they did, I got to witness, frankly, a sight and a scene and a sound that I know I will never forget. Each of these troops, coming from literally all different parts of the country, all political backgrounds, every race, every demographic you can imagine, packed into this one room. But in that moment when the President of the United States stepped in, they shouted and chanted in perfect unison over and over and over again, USA, USA, USA. It was honestly this perfect picture of what America is all about. You have people who are willing to put everything on the line, who are willing to serve, who are willing to sacrifice, and in some cases make the ultimate sacrifice so that each of us get to live free in the greatest country on the face of the planet. I mean, we can never lose sight of that. We have people literally willing to die to protect the freedoms that you and I so easily get to enjoy. And even on America's worst day, which we don't have that many of when you really look at it, we are still a country that loves freedom, that protects freedom, and has people that are willing to die so that we can pass it on to the next generation. That is a powerful thing. And in 10 years from now, in 20 years, 30, 40, 50, I don't think that America will have lost sight of what makes us so incredibly great and special. And it is that we are a country that will do anything to protect that freedom and pass it on to the next generation. The reason I know that is because I'm sitting in a room of people that I know that are completely dedicated to seeing that happen. And I get to interact with those people every single day in the state of Arkansas and all across this country. People who understand what makes America unique and will never let us lose sight of it. So thank you for the work that you do in helping in that.
Wow, Amanda, what a conversation. 2.5 hours, 2 days. I'm so glad we were able to bring it to everybody here. Top line thoughts before we let everybody go.
Moms and dads across America are empowered, and it's because of organizations like this. They finally have a voice in government, and Moms for Liberty is making change happen. I love it.
That's probably, I couldn't say it any better. You can make a difference, folks. If you are upset with what's going on, step into the void, just like Tiffany and Tina did in creating Moms for Liberty. All right, we're going to leave you with that.